And good afternoon, everyone, from St. Louis, Missouri, and the home of the Missouri Institute of Mental Health. I'm Tom Pansella with MIMH. Thanks for taking the time to join us this afternoon for part 2 of our series, our brief series on intimate partner violence. I'll introduce our speaker to you again in just a moment. For those of you who joined us last week, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the first part of this. I know an awful lot of you did, and I hope that you'll enjoy this week's program as well. There is the opportunity to ask questions or provide other comments. Next to the video window, there's a chat box. Just type your comment next to the word "say" and enter your questions there. We'll hold questions to the end of the conversation, but you can put them in there at any given point. First time you do that, you'll probably have to enter a nickname for yourself. You should never have to log in over there. Just click the "say" button, and you may have to enter a nickname right after that. Below the video window, there should be open captioning. Below that, there should be a couple of links. If you're interested in purchasing CEUs for the program, there's a link to purchase CEUs for today's program. If you're interested in popping up the slides in a separate pop-up window, there's the slides as a PDF. And also with there's a Word document that you'll see, and she'll describe that to you as we go along today, and that's available for your use as well. And so again, I'd like to introduce you to Belinda James. And you saw last week what a passionate presenter she is. She's a native of St. Louis, Missouri, where she received a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from SIU Edwardsville, her master's degree from the Brown School at Washington University, a Missouri Family Developmental Credential from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and certification in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy from the Medical University of South Carolina. For the past 17 years, she's been facilitating youth leadership programs, sexuality education sessions, and parent education workshops, as well as staff development training in the areas of Mental Health 101, communication, customer service, group dynamics, motivational interviewing, the art of de-escalation, and trauma recovery. She's also taught in the field of social work as an adjunct instructor at the Brown School of Social Work. She is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Project DEH High, Incorporated, whose mission is to provide opportunities for discussion, education, and awareness of mental health issues. In addition, she counsels women who are homeless, pregnant, and may have dual diagnosis issues of mental health and chemical dependency and/or extensive trauma backgrounds. Belinda, welcome back. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Tom. I would certainly like to thank the Missouri Institute of Mental Health for this opportunity. I am extremely excited to be back for part 2 of Intimate Partner Violence. This is really about creating opportunities to have some conversation with individuals about the issue of intimate partner violence. So we are hoping that today's session will, 1, touch your heart, but 2, offer just some aha moments and a bit of new information or confirmation that we are indeed moving in that direction or using strength-based practice with our clients. So what we are going to really focus on today is to talk a bit about Project DEH High Incorporated and then jump right into the focus of our session, which is intimate partner violence. So Project DEH High Incorporated is a small nonprofit that provides a great deal of mental health education in the community. We do presentations in school classrooms, in after-school programs, in community groups. So we do them with children and youth. We do them with adults as well, focused on parent education and focused on professional development training. We also have life skills programs that we offer for elementary, middle, and high school students that increases awareness around mental health issues, addresses self-esteem, addresses trauma, addresses entrepreneurship, addresses civic engagement, and service learning as well. So if you're certainly interested in that, feel free to visit our website at projectdehhigh.org, and we'd be more than happy to share some information with you about programming. But today's objectives are really to focus on strength-based language. How do we start that conversation with individuals on intimate partner violence, whether it's colleagues of ours, whether it includes community groups, as we really rally around this collaborative response that we hope the community continues to have with this sensitive issue, and definitely strength-based language with survivors of intimate partner violence, but also those individuals that are displaying the abusive behavior, because we also want to support them as well. We are also going to focus on discussing the process of assessing for intimate partner violence. How do we ask those questions? It's a very sensitive topic. We want to send the message that it's okay, that the door is open for us to talk about that. So how do we do that in a way that's inviting, that allows for individuals to actually share? As we know, that's a very hard process to go through. So in the midst of the hows that we're going to do this, we're going to practice what's called motivational interviewing, which is a therapeutic method that is used to help individuals move through a process of change. And then we're just going to practice. There is a specific abuse assessment screening tool that I'll go over at the end that I'm hoping you can infuse into some of the work that you do. So let's start off by focusing on the fact that it really is relational. All the work that we do, whether it is addressing intimate partner violence, anything that you are doing in your line of work, it's relational. We know that sometimes it's agenda driven, but we hope it starts out as relational, because then you can meet the agenda points. But if it's not relational, we know that there are going to be some struggles. So here's an equation that I'd like for you to just think about. Events plus our responses equals outcomes. So it really is about our attitude. That's the first key to any client satisfaction, is how are we presenting ourselves? Because our clients make a very quick impression of us as individuals and the work that we do within our organization. So as we think about life's experiences, an individual is driven by their thoughts first. So if they think that you are open and supportive, they will feel more comfortable. They will feel more motivated. They will feel more courageous about sharing, and their behavior will tell you that, because they will then be open. They will then work with you. And I'm not saying that there won't be some resistance in that process as they work with you, but certainly that thought process is where it starts. If they know it's okay, they'll share that eventually. So that's the part that we really want to focus on as we process and we think about creating opportunities. So building rapport. What we are going to do is just lay a very basic foundation. So this may be confirmation for you. This is a basic foundation of developing that connection and that relationship to move forward and bring up the very sensitive topic of intimate partner violence. Building rapport. Of course, we want to acknowledge that our clients are here. We want to thank them for coming. We want to say that we look forward to working with them, because this is all the invitation. We have to invite. If we want them to be a part of the process, we have to invite them in. Once we invite them in, it is important for us as a provider to talk about limits of confidentiality. It really is important for us to lay out all of the expectations that they have, or that we want them to know about us. Here's my role. Here's what I do. Here are the limits of confidentiality. If this is brought up, then this is what I need to do. And then you can also share what your style of communication is, just so that they know what to expect. Because sometimes our style of communication can either help the process, or it can make it just a little bit more challenging. So letting them know, hey, here's what you can expect as we talk. This is kind of how I flow. So, if it's uncomfortable, let me know so that I can best meet your needs. As you start that conversation, it can be important just to say, I want you to know this is a safe zone. This is an organization where we address intimate partner violence. So at some point as we are talking and I'm learning more about your needs, you will actually hear me ask you some questions about intimate partner violence. They'll be a little sensitive, and I'll let you know when we get to that part, and I will prepare you that they are sensitive, but I do want to let you know that we recognize the importance of intimate partner violence discussion. We recognize it as a public health issue, and please know that we do assess for it. So as you have that conversation, the thoughts that are so important for us are to realize we cannot control what clients share, but we can surely set that tone by letting them know it's okay to talk about that. So even if they haven't disclosed anything with you at that particular moment, you may have planted the seed. You may have allowed them to know that, wow, that was not judgmental. That was not painful. I think I can, over time, come back and talk to her. Or I think I can, over time, come back and talk to him about my issues. This is a process, so it doesn't happen overnight. So we just want to focus on the fact that survivors, As you think about individuals that you've worked with, and I think about those that have been on my client caseload, they've reported to me that what has helped them prepare in this process of release is to hear someone say, it's okay to talk about it. And to hear someone say that in a way that it's not a power over, and it's not a I'm trying to force it and pull it out of you, it's an invitation. When you're ready, please know that I'm here to talk about that. That's what has helped from what I hear from clients. So verbal strategies, these are just some basic things that we can think about as we are actually presenting and we're talking to survivors. Our tone of voice is everything. Because if our tone of voice, and we will not know this offhand, we will only know this if the individual lets us know. But our tone of voice can actually trigger a traumatic moment. So if we sound like the person that hurt them, if our level of our voice gets to that level, that could trigger a setback. So tone of voice is something to think about. Using the other person's name, make it personal. Speak clearly, no jargon, no extras, just speak in plain English, and use the present term. Focus on the nows, the right nows, and what they need right now, and then we can kind of work on the past. Paraphrase and summarize so that you are letting them know, I'm hearing you, and let me check in to make sure I heard it right. Please let me know if I did not get it right, because I do want to be on the same page. And as you're talking to an individual, allow them to save face. This is a hard process to come in and say, I've been abused. It's a hard process to let someone know that because there's fear behind it. They are concerned that someone might label them. So we want to think of also not only just the verbal strategies, but what are your nonverbals? Please be aware of your body posture, because body posture, again, could trigger something for someone that has been through intimate partner violence. So the way we sit, are we too close to that person? Have we put our arm around them and we really haven't asked for permission to do that? And I know some of us operate from that very physically friendly, loving, caring place of our heart, and we may not even think about that, but it really is something to think about, because again, it's a person's personal space that we're talking about and their safety. We also want to think about the seating arrangements. Are we too close? Are we kind of think about just space-wise, because if they feel too huddled over, that can make it uncomfortable as you are really trying to prepare this safe environment for them. Also, as you're talking, give them warning when you are ready to move, because any sudden moves, sometimes for an individual that has gone through intimate partner violence, could trigger a startled response. Because I do want to invite you to think about the fact that someone who has been through some violence is hypervigilant. So they're kind of on the edge, and they could be sitting, just like imagine yourself sitting on the edge of a seat and you're waiting for something to happen. So if we move quickly and we haven't quite announced that, that could somewhat throw a person off. So it's just the very basic things. Try to minimize your movement if at all possible. Use that appropriate eye contact and just avoid the physical contact in the beginning. And allow them to talk first. Give them that invitation. Now, it may be very awkward because they don't know you and you don't know them. So this is a first connection that you're trying to have. But you are inviting them in and you are letting them know you're in control of this process. So think about that. That's critical for someone who may have felt like they've been out of control for so long in their relationship. Self-control is also something that is huge. And I say this very gently and respectfully, because I know that there are so many of you that are caring, warm individuals. You want to be right there with your client and be empathetic. And so you may tear up very easily along with your client. But as much as you can, try not to cry as you listen to their story, because one, it sends a couple of messages. They may see that as you are treating them in a way of you feel sorry for them, and they may not want your sympathy. They may be looking for empathy, just an understanding, but they may not want your sympathy. Something else to think about, if you're crying, that might send a message to them that you can't handle what the issues are. And if they feel like professionally you can't handle it, that might make them less likely to continue to share. One of the other things, excuse me, that you want to try and minimize is your verbal response. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe you've been through that. Oh my goodness. Because again, it's kind of like a shock factor, and that person may think, oh, I don't know. I mean, my story's pretty heavy. I don't know that you can handle that. I've had that said to me initially in therapy sessions, and I have not even responded, but it's that initial perceived place that a person is in where they feel like maybe mine is so big and it's such a tangled web, you wouldn't be able to handle that. So just again, that invitation that I'm open, I'm here, I'm supportive, you can share what you need to share. So as we think about just being empathetic, what does that do for someone? What do you think that does? How do you think that touches their heart? It just opens them up. It just lets them know that you're there, you're understanding, it's not judgmental. They are there where they can actually share. Empathy is huge as we talk about relationship building, so certainly think about that. As part of the empathy process, what we're doing now is moving from the basic placement of foundation. We've focused on the basics and we're moving to more of the therapeutic mode of things now. So there is a method called motivational interviewing. It is actually an evidence-based practice model, and it's been out for quite a while, and it really focuses on being able to gently challenge an individual to understand and identify conflict of their own ideas and attitudes. So it can help address intimate partner violence or any other conflictual idea by addressing ambivalence. Sometimes individuals are ambivalent about intimate partner violence. I desire to leave the hurtful relationship, but I also desire to be with that person. So what do I do with that? I'm conflicted, and I don't know how to move forward and change things. So motivational interviewing can help someone look at those conflicting ideas and attitudes, but also in the same moment, honor autonomy. This is their life. They have to define what that path will look like. We can be there to be the cheerleader, to be the educator, to be the resource connector for them, but they have to make these decisions. So being able to honor that through that process is important. So there is an actual Microsoft Word document that you can have access to on the web now, and it is called the Decision Balance Activity. And what it simply does is it allows for you to have some conversation with the individual on reasons to stay in a situation, reasons to change. What are your concerns about staying in that current situation? And what are your concerns about change? Because we know with change comes emotional adjustment. It's an emotional roller coaster. I may want it really badly. I may want that change badly, but it is scary because I do not know where that will lead me. I don't know what that will feel like. I don't know what type of resources I will have. I don't know what that will make my life look like when I change. But I also desire something different. So working on change is certainly a process. And as you're working with a client, there are two questions at the bottom that you can begin to ask them. What can I do differently? And what's my first step? If I am so entangled in this process, I don't even know where to begin. So sometimes they're looking for a basic, but it's not that we tell them. We're trying to invite them to think about, what do you think is going to be the best first step for you? Because I can't name it for you. Oh, I could. If I take on the power and control position, I could name a lot of things that you could do. I could write a list, but I prefer that you do that as the person. I want to empower you to do that in that process. So please feel free to use that decision balance activity, tweak it as you need to. This is really applicable to any particular issue, whether it's intimate partner violence or some other issue that you are working with your clients on. It is a good way for individuals to be gently challenged. And notice that you hear me use the word gently, because challenged is somewhat of an uncomfortable word at times when you may tell someone, I'm going to challenge you on that. Uh-oh, this might be a power struggle now. I want to gently challenge you because I want you to look at the full picture. It's called bifocal vision. You're looking at both sides of things. So motivational interviewing is really, it's a low-key way for us to be able to support someone as they are moving through this process of change. And it's a process. So we know it won't happen overnight. Think about something that you've had to work on, that you've had to do differently. Did you do it overnight? Probably not. It took a little bit of time for you to get to that point to do something different. So as we go through this process of gently challenging our clients to think about doing things differently, there may be some resistance. There may be some pushback. Don't take that personal. Roll with the resistance. And as part of motivational interviewing, there really is a skill set of rolling with the resistance. It's not about a power play. And it's not ping pong. Ping pong is your client says something and you feel like you have to trump that. So you say something here as more of a suggestion and a power and control. And then that client's going to come back and tell you, no, this is my life, so this is what I'm going to do. And then it just keeps going. That's not what it's about. Roll with that resistance. So as part of that, it's statements that are not challenging and conflictual. So those statements, for example, could be, well, I wonder what you thought about this option versus you should just do this over here because that's what's going to help you. That's what's going to make it better. Roll with that resistance. If that person says, no, I'm not doing that. I just can't imagine myself doing that. Okay, tell me what you imagine yourself doing. What could you do? Roll with that resistance. It's not our job to bump our head against the resistance. It's our job to roll with that. So we know that clients are not reinforced for becoming argumentative and playing devil's advocate to staff suggestions. They're not reinforced by that. It's just only going to be a battle. So think of this as you are encouraging ways for them to come up with their own solutions. How many times have you had someone sitting in front of you, client, friend, family member, and you could give them a whole list of what they should do differently? Because you see it. You care for them. You can identify the path of destruction. You can identify the path of a healthier route. We can't tell them what to do. It doesn't work when we have, if we've tried it. So this is an invitation. Keep thinking of that word as an invitation. So staff can invite a client into, let's examine something different. So that's where the gentle challenge comes in. Let me gently challenge you to think of something differently. I wonder if you've thought about this before. What do you think life would look like if you tried that? How have things worked for you when you've done X, Y, Z? And I really appreciate you sharing that this is what you've done before. Tell me what that's been like for you to use that method or that route. And I wonder, have you thought about something different? These are invitation type questions because you are an information seeker. You want to know what they're thinking and where they are in life and what they have tried so that you can, propose some things that they haven't. So here are some components of the motivational interviewing that I'd like to invite you to think about. There are 4. Think of these as your oars. The O is for open-ended questions. Open-ended questions allow for detailed conversation. Those questions start with how and the what's and the when's, because you are now asking that person to give you a little bit more information compared to a closed-ended question, which will give you the answer of yes or no. That's not much to work with. Have you thought about ever leaving the relationship before? Yes. Silence. But as you ask the open-ended questions, you get a little bit more meat. So the O is open-ended. Invite them in. The A is you are affirming their support. I'm giving you credit for your courage to share what you've shared. I'm giving you credit for being here today. You probably had no idea what to expect, but you came. I'd like to know what your needs are. How can I be supportive to you? You are affirming that. You are giving them attributes. You are showing them that you appreciate them. And then there's the reflective listening. I really want to make sure that you know I'm with you in this process. So let me summarize what I think I heard. And please let me know if that's not right, because I really want to get it right. And the S is for the summarize. Can I go over what we talked about? Let's make sure that we have the right details in order as we keep moving on. So these are just good tools, again, to invite someone into that conversation. Think about this. Affirmations, what do they do for us? It's a warm fuzzy. That's exactly what it is. It's genuine. It's a direct statement. It lets a client know that you can appreciate them. You know what? I appreciate your honesty. Or it sounds like you're really concerned about that. Let's talk more about that. The let's talk more or the tell me about that are called door openers. So more invitations for continuous conversation. As we talk about open-ended questions, I would really like to encourage people to not use the question why. Why is judgmental. Why could put someone in a position to feel less of themselves, as if someone is questioning their decision-making, their abilities, their integrity, their character, their strength. And it's also a question that puts someone in a position to feel stuck. So for you parents out there, raise your hand in cyberspace. Have you ever asked your child, why did you do that? And what answer did you get? I don't know. Or because I wanted to. That does not help anyone move forward in the process. The question why does not challenge someone to think differently. It allows for them to be stuck, and it actually causes more frustration because I may not have an answer to your question. So just imagine that for a person who is in an abusive relationship. Why are you staying in that relationship? You know what? I don't know. And now I feel bad because I don't know. And I feel bad because I'm in an abusive relationship. And I feel bad because I think you're judging me. So you know what? This conversation is done. I probably will not share much more with you. So please avoid the question why. It's really not, it's not a team player type of question. So as we think about using this therapeutic model of motivational interviewing, think of this being your low-key way of providing feedback. You are giving them suggestions, but it's in a question and in an invitational format. I wonder if you've thought about this. I wonder what you think about that. That's very different than saying, try this. I'm not the expert in your life, nor should I be. But I can give you some information. I can give you resources. I can provide direction. So yes, in our roles, in our positions, in our educational level, and in our experience, we can certainly help a client and give them information, but it is all about delivery. So I don't want anyone to walk away feeling like, no, we shouldn't be the expert. Yes, you have expertise to share, but it's your delivery that counts. So if it feels like for the client that it's an invitation, then we may have more of a productive conversation. So rolling with that resistance, avoiding the arguments, shifting the focus, but then also using that supportive, non-judgmental, collaborative approach is much more productive than the power over. This is a partnership with. Just remember that, partnership with. Think about this. Quote of the day. Quote for your thought bag. Listening isn't a matter of intellect or genius. It's a habit we can all improve. All improve on a regular basis. So let's think about our roles as we continue to have conversation with individuals. Beware of the expert trap. What do you think the expert trap is? Think about that for a second. The expert trap is when you provide clients with the solutions without them having a voice. I feel like you should do this. Oh, wow, you feel like. So now that's a personal, now you're making it personal. Personal thought of what I should do. Or you should. Okay, now that's power over me. Well, guess what? I have enough power and control issues in the abusive relationship that I'm in. I don't think I need that from the support that I'm trying to seek out. So be aware of that expert trap. I say that very gently because sometimes now I'm going deep. I won't ask for forgiveness on this because this really is on purpose, but I am going deep. Sometimes we fall into that expert trap because it's comfortable with our personality style. I need to know that I have information that I can share with you, and I need for someone to need me. Uh-oh, you didn't expect that today, did you? Be aware. Part of this is self-assessment. We all have to go through it as providers. We all do. So just be aware of that. It's really easy to fall into that trap. It's easy to fall into that trap because we care also. We care. We want to help. We want something different for you. We don't want to see you hurting anymore. So it's really easy to fall into that. Part of the expert trap is also the question of, what would you do? What would you do? Your client's sitting in front of you and they've told you their story. And the infamous question, what would you do, Belinda? That's a hard spot to be in because you really do want to answer that question. So it's more of, let's redirect this. I wonder what's worked for you before. Out of all of the options and all of the options that any of us could do, let's talk about what's worked for you and what hasn't. And then maybe we can explore some things that you haven't tried and talk about the feelings and the emotional preparation around that redirection. Because it's not about what we would do. Our path may be very different than theirs. And again, it falls into that expert trap. And guess what happens? If you go and tell them, well, here's what you should do, they go back and try that, and it doesn't work. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. That's a big issue. You don't want to fall into that trap. I don't want to see any of us fall into that trap. So thinking about connections, thinking about building rapport, what do our clients want? They want special treatment. Of course they do. That's important to them. We all do. They want that special treatment. They want choices. They want to know they have options. They want high quality service and support without the judgment behind it. They want it now, and they want to know that we're reliable. So things to think about. So as we are focused on nonverbal and verbal strategies, as we're focused on motivational interviewing as a therapeutic tool that can help us in our communication, let's start to look at understanding the effects that trauma has on our communication. Because sometimes the concern is individuals are labeled by their presentation, by how they present to you. Now, we've talked about our delivery and how we present to them. That's important. It is also important for us to not label them in their presentation. So effects of trauma on communication could run the gamut. We could have an individual on this end of the spectrum that's argumentative. Maybe they're pretty aggressive in their approach to you and what they need. We could have someone on the other end of the spectrum that's numb, emotionally numb. It's really challenging for them to be expressive in their words of what they need, or they're very passive. We could have someone that's hypervigilant, so they're extra on the edge. So just think of the fact that it could run the gamut of things. But we're talking survival. We're talking individuals that are in survival mode because of the hurts. So it's kind of like roll with it. Be sensitive to their style. Don't react, but respond. That's important. Don't react, but respond, and don't be judgmental. So think of some barriers to developing trust. Clients might find themselves seeking help from you at their lowest moment, but they've still mustered up enough strength to come in and say, here I am. But if they've fallen deeper because of something that maybe we said or did, that's going to just knock them down even further. And some of our clients may be deeply hurt through disrespect. So those are some things that we have to think about. So let's look at barriers. We know trust is a barrier. We know that their past hurts are a barrier. But here are some other barriers that come from that exposure to trauma. It could be that their partner has threatened to kill them. So now we are looking at assessing on a level of orders of protection for an individual. We are assessing on a level of protection for the children if needed. Another barrier could be that a partner has threatened to harm or abduct the child. So we have to consider those safety issues as well. As we talk with clients about the potential of seeking other housing, so maybe you are working with a client on moving out of that abusive home and somewhere else, they may think of a shelter as a scary place. There are lots of assumptions of shelters. I do therapy with women that live in a shelter. There are a lot of assumptions about shelters, such as shelters are dirty. Shelters have creepy people that hang around them. There's so many assumptions. So one, sending the message for that individual that shelters can be clean and safe. Shelters have supportive staff. There are internal supports such as counseling, legal supports that you can get connected to. Another barrier might be that the individual that's being harmed does not want to emotionally or legally hurt their partner. Remember, this is a conflict of ideas and attitudes. The desire to leave, but the desire to stay. So So they may be concerned about that. So just letting them know there are many legal options. There are many counseling options that could help a person work through that. So resources. What are some resources that we can definitely get you connected to? Missouri Coalition Against Domestic Violence is an important resource. I encourage you to visit their website. There are lots of domestic violence resources on their website. Every state should have their own coalition on domestic violence. So I encourage you to pull that up for your state so that you know who your key players are and develop those personal relationships. It is great to know you have the opportunity to pick up the phone and call someone at a DV shelter and say, "Hi Lisa, how are you? This is Belinda. How's it been going in your camp? It's pretty busy in mine. I'm calling because I need to see if you have an opening. I have a person that needs to move in. She has 2 children and here are circumstances." So developing those personal relationships. There are other resources such as LifeSource Consultants. They provide crisis management and case management for individuals. They will allow for help with getting individuals connected to a safe housing location. They do therapy, individual and group. They have support groups. They do education workshops in the community. Visit their website for their crisis line. So there are lots of different resources, and I certainly have some more of them available at the end of our presentation. So let's kind of summarize where we've gone. We've laid the foundation of the basics. Basic communication, basic rapport building, and a little bit of the infusion of a therapeutic model called motivational interviewing into your conversation, which please know, as you read about motivational interviewing, you can learn to put that in your heart and do that. Okay? I just want to send that message. You really can. Practice that. Read about it. Take some training. Training is always good on motivational interviewing. You can infuse that into your communication. Right now, where we're moving to is the assessment side of things as we're on the wrap-up end. So as we move into the assessment part, we want to think of observation of nonverbals. We want to think of observation of verbals. What are the individuals telling us? What are their abusive partners telling us if they are present in the office with the individual that you are working with? Looking for signs of mental health issues. So as we observe a person's behavior, if there's some flat affect, if they show some fright, if you see some signs of depression and anxiety, if you see signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, if you see over-compliance or excessive distrust, let those be red flags for you. That these are signs of intimate partner violence exposure. They can be. So let's have our radar up for that. If you do not know what signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder are, I certainly encourage you to do some research. Project DEH High Inc. has great resources. Mental Health America has great resources. It is really important for all of us as clinicians, really the community at large, to understand and recognize those signs as we're working with people. So here are some signs really quickly. For an individual to be clinically diagnosed with depression, they have to have 5 of these 9 symptoms for a 2-week period or more. And it could be this persistent sadness and irritability. And it's important to also understand gender differences. So with males, signs of depression may look more like aggression and anger compared to females. There could be this loss of interest in things that were once pleasurable. So maybe you enjoyed bike riding with your friends and now you have no interest at all in friends or in bike riding. So just that loss of interest in pleasurable activities. Changes in your weight loss or weight gain, changes in appetite, a ferocious appetite even when you're not hungry, or just a really minimal appetite. Sleeping difficulties, just this observable change in physical movement. If your movements are agitated or you're moving really slowly. Concentration problems, any thoughts of worthlessness or guilt. Feeling fatigued or just this diminished energy, hard to have enough energy to get out of the bed, take a shower, make a phone call. If you see a diminished hygiene issue, you had a client that was well kept and now all of a sudden they come in and their clothes are not clean and their hair is not combed. So look for those signs. Certainly if they are making comments of any suicidal thoughts or preoccupation with death, all can be signs of depression. Anxiety, we know anxiety is a normal reaction to stress. But if it is to a point where someone becomes excessive with it, irrational dread of just everyday situations, that can potentially be anxiety. There are different anxiety disorders: generalized anxiety, obsessive compulsiveness, post-traumatic stress disorder, panic disorder, social phobias. When we talk about intimate partner violence, one of the major anxiety disorders that we focus on is post-traumatic stress disorder. That's an anxiety disorder that someone gets when they're exposed to trauma, exposed to grief and loss, exposed to any traumatic event. It can be of any age. You hear a lot about PTSD with our vets coming home from the military. So let's go through some signs. 3 different categories. Re-experiencing. They may have flashbacks, a smell. Tone of voice, as I mentioned earlier, could be a trigger for a flashback. Frightening thoughts. Avoidance symptoms are another category. They will work very hard to avoid that same situation, avoid that type of conversation, avoid being around that type of person. They're feeling emotionally numb, feeling strong, guilty, worried, having trouble remembering the dangerous event. As you're talking with a client and you're trying to get as much detail as you can, if they're having trouble remembering that, let that be a red flag for you. Could be some potential PTSD. And the last category under PTSD is the hyperarousal. They're feeling really startled. Any loud movement, any quick movement or any loud noises could startle them. Feeling tense, they're on edge. This is again a place where they're having trouble sleeping or having some anger issues. So all just increased awareness. Knowledge is power. Sometimes problems present themselves, but if we don't know what to call it, then we don't know. So looking at the partner's behavior. So let's just say you have a couple that comes into your office. You are assessing for intimate partner violence. And you happen to notice that the one particular partner is over-solicitous. Gets lots of information. Has to answer all of the questions for the other person. They become maybe hostile or agitated by the questions that you ask around intimate partner violence. They never leave that client's side. They are monitoring that person's responses. Let that be a red flag, because that could certainly be some power and control that we're seeing in an intimate partner violence relationship. So we certainly want to make sure we're asking directly, and we can make a statement such as, violence is such a part of our community. It is a public health issue. We know it affects individuals emotionally and physically. We care enough that we're going to ask. So you can just expect that those will be some of the questions that you ask, but you want to ask in private. Make sure it's a safe place for that individual to do that. So you can talk about confidentiality and program services, but if you are noticing that one individual may be the one that is receiving the abuse, you certainly want to pull that individual to the side and have some conversation with them. And be aware of your mandatory reporting laws in your state around intimate partner violence. For healthcare providers and social workers, they are mandated to report injuries such as gunshot inflictions. They're mandated to report that to authorities. Social workers are mandated to report abuse and neglect of a child, 18 or younger, or an elderly person, 65 or older. So being able to share those expectations with the individual before they start talking is important, because you're building that relationship, and you certainly want it to be about trust. You also want that individual to know what to expect. So if you share XYZ with me, this is what you can expect that I can do to support you and get you connected. So as we're opening the door, you're finding ways to do this in your own words. Use your own words, but just know that there's power in words. So thinking about the use of physical hurts versus domestic violence. Now, I may have some pushback on this. I invite anyone to send those messages to me. We can have some friendly debate over language. I think that is what helps us as professionals really focus on strength-based practice. There's power in language. So as I work with clients in therapy, instead of saying sexually abused, physically abused, I'll say sexual hurts. I'll say verbal hurts. I'll say physical hurts. Hurts tends to have a little less of a sharp tone than the word abuse. That's just my thing. You have to find what's comfortable for you, but I am inviting you to think about the power in language. Be prepared to hear your client's answers. If you ask the question, be prepared to hear what you just asked about, because it may be pretty graphic. I'm here to tell you, I have heard some very graphic stories in my therapy sessions. I walk away admiring that person for their resilience. So think about that. We know that face-to-face conversation is so much more effective than a questionnaire. Your organization may do a great job of assessing on paper. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? When they've circled, yes, I've been raped. Yes, I've been abused as a child. Do you just check that box off in your abuse category, your rape category as you are collecting statistics? Or do you do something else with that in terms of follow-up? So think about that. Caring, empathetic questions, that certainly may open the door for later disclosure, as we know. So let's talk about, and we've kind of gone over the closed-ended questions and the open-ended. Here are some examples. Did that upset you? Yes. Silence. That's a one-word answer, so you need a little bit more to help that person work through some of those emotions. Are you tired? Yes, I really am. But that's all you're getting. Do you want to go? Yeah, I kind of want to go. I'm a little uncomfortable. Can I help you? No. Yes. So we know that open-ended questions are much more challenging. How did that make you feel? How are you feeling? What would you like to do? How can I help? Invitations for support. So let's talk about this invitation through a specific abuse assessment screening. This is a well-known screening tool. It has been tested in clinical settings, and it has been effective in identifying violence. 4 questions. Very simple. 1, in the last year. And if you've seen this client repeatedly, if this is a healthcare setting or a social service setting and you've seen them repeatedly, you can say, in the last year or since I've seen you last, have you been hit, slapped, kicked, or otherwise physically hurt by someone? If yes, by whom? Number of times, nature of the injury. 2, since you've been pregnant, have you been hit, slapped, kicked, or otherwise physically hurt by someone? If yes, by whom? Number of times, nature of the injury. Number 2 allows you to also assess for maybe some potential harm to child. If they've had the baby already, the baby's 2 or 3 months old, baby's a year old, you can be assessing for potential abuse of that child or harm to that child. Question 3, within the last year, has anyone made you do something sexual that you didn't want to do? Think of the impact of that question versus in the last year, have you been raped? It's a pretty heavy word. Yeah, I have, but I just really cannot come to terms yet with that. I haven't accepted that yet. So I'm not sure how I want to take that in. So again, power of language. 4, are you afraid of your partner or anyone else? Now flip that, because that's a closed-ended question, right? Who, if anyone, are you afraid of? Who, if anyone, might you be afraid of? So we have to challenge language all the time. I always talk about open-ended questions, but that doesn't mean your screening will have open-ended questions. So as a practitioner, sometimes you have to flip it. Sometimes you have to revise it to make it, again, strength-based language. So as we think about additional questions and you are assessing for emotional abuse, you could ask, does your partner ever humiliate you, shame you, put you down, call you names? Do they do that in front of others? Prevented you from doing things you wanted to do? And assessing for child abuse. Within the last year, what has someone done? Now I'm flipping the question here because this one says has someone, so that's a closed-ended question. But in the last year, what, if anything, has someone done to make you concerned about safety of your child? Because we do have to assess for child abuse. Now, there are lots of statistics out there, and I do want to invite people to think about this, that in homes where we see pet abuse, you tend to see child abuse and neglect. Okay, there's a correlation between the two. So if you've learned of animal abuse in a household and you know that there are children in that household, let that be a red flag for you to maybe do a little bit more assessment about the safety for the kids. As we're thinking about language and the how-tos, here's a question not to ask. Why don't you just leave? Again, it's the judgmental, it's the really questioning their abilities. What did you do to make him or her so angry? Oh, it's my fault? Wow, that's really disrespectful. We certainly don't want to put someone in that position. Why do you go back? Again, the why is never a productive question to ask. So here are reasons that clients may say no to your assessment questions. Embarrassment and shame. I'm already embarrassed or ashamed, and you just made me feel more of that because you asked me the why questions. Fear of retaliation of the partner. Lack of trust in others. You know, there are other services that didn't really come through, so why should I be okay with yours? Economic dependence. If there's no other financial option for that individual. The desire to keep my family together. I don't want my children to lose out on a two-parent household. I'm scared about what that would look like as a single parent. Those are all things to think about. Unaware of the alternatives. We cannot assume that everyone knows what the resources are because they don't. And just that lack of support. And that lack of support could be that family and friends are tired. I am tired of seeing you go back to that hurtful relationship, and I don't understand it, so I'm pulling back. That's hurtful. Our clients need to know that we are there to support them, family and friends. If you're watching, your loved one who's in that abusive relationship needs to know you are still there regardless. Statistics say that an individual in an abusive relationship, specifically a woman, will leave and return to that abusive relationship 7 times before they end it. I really want you to let that just resonate in your mind. 7 times. That calls for patience from us as the caring person. We don't want to see our loved ones suffer. We want them to end that relationship now, get out and get to a healthier place in life, but it's just not that smooth of a ride sometimes. It's just not. So definitely being understanding of that. So responding to the yeses. When a client says, yes, there are some things that I want to talk about, things you can say, or if they say, yes, I've had some experiences with intimate partner violence, definitely let them know this is not your fault. This was not your fault. You don't deserve it. You deserve to be emotionally and physically healthy. You deserve to be happy. I'm sorry you've been hurt. Do you want to talk about it? Is it okay? Let's talk about that a little bit. But you're asking permission. I'm concerned about your safety and that of your children. Help is available to you. Be more than happy to share some resources. Tell me how I can be helpful. So we want to assess for a patient's safety. Are they at risk? Are their children at danger? Are they at danger for losing their life? I mean, certainly sometimes for fear we may not want to get involved, but if you feel like that person's at risk for their life, bring the authorities in. Call the police. We all can play a part in this as a collaborative effort. If that violence has escalated, or if you know that there are weapons in the home, call the police. That is our way of doing that, of supporting. And as we talk about assessing for safety, there's safety planning. Safety plans are a tool that's provided, or developed rather, with the person that's in the abusive relationship, and it helps to identify details to help them stay safe. So for someone that's in that abusive relationship, a safety plan could include details on how to keep myself safe the next time abuse escalates. What room would I go to in my home? The kitchen may not necessarily be a safe place because it tends to have knives or other sharp objects. A bathroom may not necessarily be a safer place because there's no exit door. I'm not as close to maybe the front door. So having those types of details in the safety plan are important. The same with children. What rooms, what closet, where could you go to be safe when something happens? For that individual that's leaving, a safety plan could include details such as having an extra bag hidden in a closet but easily accessible that has extra keys, some money, your birth certificate, your social security card, your passport, all of your documents that you need for ID. Who will you call? Where will you go? Who are the people that will not be able to give information to the person that's abusive to you? All of those specifics could be included in your safety plan. But we want to validate that survivor's experiences of the violence. We want to validate their cultural, spiritual, and community beliefs and acknowledge their feelings and certainly build on their strengths. What have you done in the past to keep yourself safe? Let's talk about what you can continue to do right now. What are some ideas? And assist them in these short-term and those long-term plans. So again, a part of the safety plan is packing that bag and having personal documents and a code for your family and friends. They may not be able to get on the phone and give specifics of, I'm leaving today because he or she just got explosive again. The code might be, it's Pizza Hut time. And your family knows, okay, I'm going to meet you 2 blocks over to pick you up because that's part of the plan that we came up with. So here are some options for our clients. Stay with the abuser and formulate a safety plan because remember, this is a process. These are the person has to take. Remove the abuser through arrest or protective orders, or certainly to leave the relationship temporarily or permanently. But again, please roll with them on this process because it is emotional and they need that support. So as part of referrals, you want to have hospital referrals. You want to have all kinds of community referrals, law enforcement, shelters, local hotlines, child protective services, and some specific ones that we've talked about, Life Source Consultants. Safe Connections is another great organization that provides individual and group therapy for those that have gone through domestic violence. Alive is an organization that will provide crisis management and help someone get safely settled in a motel if there are no openings to a domestic violence shelter. Some of our local shelters, the Women's Safe House, St. Martha's Hall, Kathy J. Weinman Center. So I really encourage you to find your local domestic violence partners in your community and have that list at your hip. Let that be something you carry around with you and you become very familiar with. Call them and ask for a tour just so you can have more of a personal connection. So when your clients are in need, you do have that connection because this is a collaborative response. Somewhere on this puzzle, you are a part of that group, whether it's law enforcement, the faith-based community, hospital personnel, education system, friends, family, policymakers. We are all a part of the process, and it will take a collaborative effort for us to support the individuals that are going through the abuse, but support the individual that has the abusive behavior as well. I really encourage that. I don't want to leave that population out. They are in need as well. There are some emotional issues and there are some hurts going on for that individual as well. And I can name one local organization in our St. Louis community called Raven. They provide what's called batterers intervention. So they will work with the individual that is presenting the abusive behavior. They need support too. Raven is the third oldest program of its kind across the country, and I'm sure that there are other organizations in your local area as well that provide batterers intervention. We want to look at this as a holistic approach, mind, body, spirit, for everybody, not just one end. Because if we only fix one end, seesaw. Now we've got this one healed and up higher, but this one's still down here hurting. So we need that balance. We need to address it holistically, and we need to do it in a collaborative way. So I send this wrap-up message to you. Glimmers of hope, 2 for 50 or 3 for 50 cents. Please hold on to hope. Please hold on to hope. We can really positively impact this intimate partner violence public health issue, which is what it is. So please purchase your Glimmers of Hope by making those personal connections with your local community. This is a collaborative effort. I invite you to present questions at this point. I invite you to seek out information from Project DEH High Incorporated on our website. I invite you to look up your local community organizations that address intimate partner violence. Please make this a collaborative effort. Thank you for your time.
And we have had a couple of questions come in. It's another jam-packed hour here. And you started to address this a little bit, but how do you address an issue of domestic violence when there is no physical violence, but only emotional abuse?
It's a longer of a process sometimes because when a client presents with physical bruises, that's observable, that's something that you can work with. Emotional abuse, you may not know about that for months working with your client. But the fact that they come back to you says everything. It's a process. It will come out, and we hope that it comes out sooner than later, but it's a process. That's the best way that I can put it. It's a patience factor, And it is a constant invitation to an individual that it's okay to talk about. We have no idea who we're talking to when our clients walk in our door. We do not know what their issues are. We don't know what road they have traveled. The only thing that we can say is we recognize intimate partner violence as a public health issue. We want to support individuals on it. We invite you to talk about it. But it is a process.
Another question comes in. I understand that we are mandated reporters, but if it is an IPV situation and not strict child abuse, do you call child welfare to remove the child, leaving the mother?
Now, I will say that Children's Division will look at intimate partner violence as an abuse issue if children are involved in it. But as medical professionals, they are mandated to report certain injuries that present themselves in the hospitals. Social workers are a little different. Now, if we are concerned that children are being abused because of the exposure to the domestic violence, then yes, we are mandated to report that. But if there are no children involved in the abusive relationship, then we work with that.
All right, we also got to thank you for presenting information for both sides of the issue rather than just for one side of the issue, which is very good. Again, thank you very much for your time here today, folks. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the folks in the room joining us and giving us that visual feedback, which is always important to our presenters. It's always helpful to have you here. We're grateful that you guys all decided to join us again this week. Keep your eyes on our website, keep on our email list, and let your friends know about these free web conferences as they come up. We'll keep that CEU link available to you. We'll send it to you in a follow-up email as well. And also, there'll be information coming up about our upcoming Spring Training Institute, so keep an eye on your email for that as well. Again, I thank you for your time and attention this afternoon. And Belinda, great job again. Thank you.
Tom. Appreciate the invitation.